Comrade Confucius is really anti-Chinese. We used to be friends, but not anymore. Yes, the Chinese have 5,000 years of continuous history. This is something that every single person who is culturally Chinese should take a degree of pride in, because we are a continuation of the legacy and hardships of our ancestors passed down from our parents. Chinese people having some pride in the Chinese history is not the same as racial supremacy, nor does it have anything to do with being a certain color or DNA, because being a Chinese identity is not based on racial purity, but a cultural identity.
So once again, I've come under fire by the esteemed American right-winger Captain Cool 07 for apparently bringing shame upon the Chinese race and bringing disgrace to the Chinese culture. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Captain Cool and I have had beef, if you want to use the American term, had beef, or rather had a man-to-man feud, ever since last year, when he accused me of misrepresenting Confucianism because I wore a sarong. Which is apparently a skirt. And because I wore a sarong, which is part of my Peranakan culture, he accused me of introducing gender fluidity into Chinese culture. You can watch the first part of our feud, the old video that I made last year. I'll put a link in the description box. But anyway, his cultural ignorance of our Southeast Asian culture aside, Captain Cool is a very interesting fellow. You know, for a man who accuses me of laughing as a woman, he sure likes to dress up like a Russian soldier with that ski mask and Russian military uniform. In fact, I've even seen him, you know, speaking with a Russian accent and singing Russian songs on camera. Oh, yes. And of course now, Captain Cool has come after me once again, and this time he is comparing me to a Japanese collaborator. He wasn't happy with the latest video I made, which was about race ultras in Malaysia. Now, I thought it was a very, very fair and balanced video. You know, I didn't only talk about the Malay race ultras, but I also talked about the Chinese Malaysian race ultras. And so, yes, I have not only drawn the ire of Chinese ultras in Malaysia, but I've also drawn the ire of Chinese ultras in America. So this is going to be part 2 of a 2-part series, maybe we'll even turn it into a 3-part series, of a feud between myself and Captain Cool. Stay tuned. Let's respond to what he said.
Ancient China, known as Huaxia, judged people based on one's manners, language, clothing, and etiquette, and not by blood characteristics. Proper etiquette was important. This was why China was called the land of etiquette in ancient days, and there is so much about giving face. Comrade Confucius implying that Chinese taking pride in their historic legacy is the same as being racist, or a form of racial pride is a severe misrepresentation of the Chinese civilization and a sweeping slander of the tolerance which China has always exercised, suggesting anyone that loves their own Chinese heritage as a racial supremacist.
Now you watch it before you misrepresent me, yeah? I have never said that anyone cannot take pride in their civilizational greatness, as long as you don't shove it up people's faces and say that your civilization is better than others, which was not even the point of contention. My grievance with the Chinese ultras in Malaysia, those who come from the vernacular school ultras, is their knee-jerk reaction to any criticism of certain behaviors in the Chinese Malaysian community that might not be very good. For example, belittling, insulting, and putting down people who don't fit their mold of being Chinese enough. Like, you've seen the sort of comments that they say about people they deem to be bananas, people who don't speak Chinese. They hate people they regard as bananas. You could be literally a banana who was educated in a kebangsaan, that is to say a government school, minding your own damn business, but for the crime of not speaking Chinese and only speaking English and Malay, well, they'll look at you and say, "Ah, what an asshole, fucking banana." That is the problem I have. The problem I have is a fanatical and very, very puritanical view on what a Chinese person is supposed to be. And basically a deep-seated sense of hatred for people who are not Chinese enough for your taste, even though those people might be minding their own business. I couldn't possibly have made it any clearer in my latest video. It's just that, you know, these diasporite lunatics take my words and then they interpret it in a totally different way. For example, if I say ABC, then they will interpret what I said as BCD in order to misrepresent the point that I am trying to get across, which is very, very clear. I make my point crystal clear. I have no problem with people studying their own so-called mother tongue, taking pride in the achievements of their culture, and even, you know, even promoting their culture in a respectful way, as long as they don't shove it up people's throat and basically behave like evangelists and express intolerance and contempt towards other people who don't have as much of an interest in the culture. For example, if you're a Chinese diaspora person who isn't particularly interested in the Chinese language and isn't particularly emotionally connected to China, you know, it's their own business, right? You don't have a right to try and shove your values up people's face and sort of express contempt and hatred to others who have chosen a different life from you. Some of us are happily assimilated. Okay, we have no emotional ties to the so-called motherland, considering that, you know, my ancestor came here hundreds of years ago. China is but a distant memory to me. I'm more Southeast Asian than East Asian. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being more East Asian than Southeast Asian. We should respect each other as equals, ought we not?
China's cultural value at its core always has been a tolerant, multiracial identity, and anyone could in theory become Chinese with some conditions. Even some blonde Uyghurs, Kazakhs, Hmong, Lisu, and Slav Russians who have lived in China for a few hundred years these days are assimilated to be Chinese now. They speak the language, and their courtesy, manners, and customs are very alike to the Han. They have representation in government. This proves to me that Chinese is not a racial purity concept. If we look earlier in history, how did people living in modern Guangdong and Yunnan, so far from the Central Plains, become considered Han Chinese? During the time of the Tang Dynasty, a real Confucian, Han Yu, wrote in original way that if the foreign lords used a foreign ritual, then they should be called foreign. If they use the Hua Chinese rituals, then they should be called Hua, for the distinction between Hua and Yi rests in the heart.
When did I say anything about blood and soil racial purity? When? I challenge anyone who makes such a baseless accusation to look through my posts with a fine-tooth comb and see if I've ever accused the Chinese ultras of practicing blood purity. The issue is not blood purity. It's not about the Nazi one-drop rule that I have an issue with, but rather their fanatically zealous view of the world and their intolerance to other Chinese people who might not fit their rigid mold of what a real Chinese person is supposed to be. Now, you could be minding your own business. You can just respectfully say, Chinese language sounds beautiful, but, I'm just about as interested in learning it as I am interested in learning Italian or Greek. And they will hate your guts for it. They take that as a personal rejection. It's kind of like, if let's say you approach a lady at a bar or a restaurant and she says, no, thank you. Then you say, oh, so you must hate men, eh? You're a misandrist. Oh, you don't want to date me because you hate men. No, maybe you're just not her type. Well, that's the same thing. There are Chinese people, believe it or not, who aren't particularly as Chinese as you presume them to be and are not as particularly interested in the Chinese language as you are. Just like there are people who are interested in golf, and there are people who are not interested in golf. Just because a person is indifferent to golf, it doesn't mean that they hate golf. So, if I lived in China, or if somebody lives in China, then it's perfectly reasonable to expect them to learn the Chinese language. Just like if you live in Malaysia, it's perfectly reasonable to expect everyone to have a working knowledge of the Malay language. But we don't live in China, we live in Malaysia. So I don't see why knowing Chinese, for example, will prevent me from integrating in Malaysian society. Or rather, I don't see why not knowing Chinese will prevent anyone from integrating into Malaysian society. I think it's fine if you want to learn a language, but you can't force it up people's throats. Okay, it has to be done voluntarily, This is a free world. We're adults here, yeah? Just because somebody doesn't like the things you like, it doesn't mean you have to condemn them and belittle them and call them dirty bananas or race traitors, whatever. Not everyone is as interested in your Chinese culture or language as you presume them to be, okay?
His agenda is that he wants the Chinese to become rootless, lose their roots, lose their history, then advocate for gender fluidity while still claiming in his name to be a Confucian. He is a real wolf in sheep's clothing. When I met Comrade Confucius, he sent me Instagram private messages praising me, telling me how much he supported Asians, how he stood with Asians, this and that. He posted comments that he would patrol Chinatown with me if he was here in America, stand with Asians, all that nice stuff. In his old videos, he praised me as an intersectionalist and told people to go sub on my channel. Then, after he got 1,000 subscribers last year, he goes full Malaysian Lee Teng Hui and shows his true colors. This man is anti-China. He's anti-Chinese, anti-Chinese diaspora, says Chinese people overseas are failures for not integrating into Malaysia. He sold out his principles for 1,000 subscribers. Nobody is allowed to minimize our Chinese history, downsize our Chinese roots, or harass our Chinese cultural heritage. Isn't it funny how these fanatical diaspora ultras all sound like Zionists, when it ever concerns people who disagree with them?
You're calling the Malay kain pelikat something which is customarily worn by men in this country a skirt. You're calling it gender bending when I wear a kain pelikat? I hope, for your sake, you don't come to Malaysia and point to people in Southeast Asia and say, why are you wearing a skirt, man? Because they would bash you up. They would knock your teeth in, okay? And no, I haven't changed my views or my principles in any way. I still believe, of course, that America is a very uncivilized society And I don't encourage Asian people to move to America. In fact, I actively discourage Malaysians from moving to America. And I have full sympathy for Asian Americans who feel that they're being persecuted in America, and they have good reason to feel that way. But these are two separate issues altogether. Me wearing a sarong is a totally different issue altogether. But you turned on me like a pack of wolves just because I happen to reveal some inconvenient truths about Asian society. It's not perfect, and I have a right to criticize it because I was brought up in an Asian society. And, you know, to compare me to a Japanese imperial army traitor is a whole new level of low. If you think you're going to rage bait me with this, well, I'm sorry, but I'm not easily rage baited, you see. Now, you can see that it's comedic hyperbole to compare me to a Japanese imperial officer just because I happen to express certain inconvenient truths about Asian society, and I'm not above criticizing the behaviors of other Asians when I see negative traits of behavior, right? You know, you don't live in this society. You are an American. You cannot profess to be more Asian than I am because you were not brought up in Asia. Simply put, I could not profess to be more American than you are because I was not brought up in America. I can't claim to be more Western than you are, okay? Anyway, I don't really have much time to spare, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this jackass here. But I just want to end this video by saying, if you don't like me, that's your right, okay? If you want to express an opinion about me, you can even say I'm an obnoxious bastard. That's fine. But we draw the line at misrepresentation. Captain Cool, if that's even your name, and obviously I don't know your real name, and you're too much of a pussy to show your face on camera, has misrepresented me several times in his analysis today. And about that last paragraph, when you said that I said that overseas Chinese people are failures for not integrating into Malaysian society, that was a very sneaky little move of yours, yeah? Any honest person who watches my latest video and has a shred of integrity knows that I was talking about a very, very specific type of Chinese Malaysian, a very, very bigoted type of race ultra who hates any Chinese that does not fit their mold on what a real Chinese person is. You know, if I challenge anyone to watch that video, and if you have a shred of integrity, you will know that I am not referring to all Chinese Malaysians. All of my Chinese Malaysian friends who went to vernacular school and are my friends know that I'm not talking about them, but I'm talking about an extremely intolerant and bigoted type of race ultra that considers themselves not only superior to most Malays, but also considers themselves superior to people whom they deem as bananas, right? And this is like saying, for example, that, you know, if I point out the negative behaviors of certain African Americans and you say, oh, you hate all black people, that's just as sneaky as doing something like that. When you sort of like speak for the entire race, just because I call out the bad behavior of a select few. But yeah, I mean, the Captain Cool's followers are obviously not here to seek truth. They're here to get their biases confirmed, you see. So they're not going to watch my second latest video, the one before this, to find out the truth, because in their mind, they have already decided that I'm a villain, you see. That's fine. But let me tell you something, yeah? As I've said, if I say ABC and you present it as BCD, you are more than just expressing an opinion. You are committing the act of fitna. Do you know what fitna is? Fitna in Arabic means slander. Captain Cool, you call yourself a Christian, yeah? So in Christianity, is it alright to slander people, to misrepresent their point of view, and to malign them by representing them in a way that is not supposed to be, by representing them in an erroneous way on purpose? God sees everything, yeah? Whatever you say on camera is seen by God. If you believe in God, you are supposed to be a Christian, right? That's what you said in one of your previous videos. You were open to the possibility of Christianity. Well, I hope that you realize that pride is a sin, and also slander is probably a sin in Orthodox Christianity. Yeah? You take those words back. If not for me, then you take them back for God, because God sees everything. Whatever he has said about me, saying that I'm trying to strip the Chinese diaspora of their culture, trying to imply that the Chinese diaspora have failed to integrate as a whole, these are baseless lies from the tongue of the serpent. If you're a Muslim, you will say that these lies come straight from the mouth of Shaitan himself, right? Captain Cool 07 is a liar, a fraud, a lapper, and a phony representative of Chinese culture, who's even more phony than I am. You have no right to speak on behalf of all the Chinese people in the world, considering there are many who know the truth, because they know me personally. But Captain Cool, I don't know if you're a Christian or not, but God sees everything. God knows what you're doing. If you are shamelessly lying in the light, then God alone knows what you do in the dark. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. And yes, thank you for promoting my channel, Captain Cool. Not even going to share. Well, you're not even going to show your face, of course, because you hide like a skulking rat.